In childhood disability research, the involvement and collaboration of families is essential for achieving positive outcomes for all. Involving families as co-researchers can help to enhance the relevance of research to the target population. How can we best engage families as equal partners in health research? This is episode 18 of Pep Talks, the Patient Engagement Podcast. In this episode, recorded in the summer of 2020, we speak with Rachel Martens, a research engagement strategist with CanChild. Rachel has an interest in federal and provincial disability policy, and she is studying population health and knowledge mobilization part-time in university. Rachel shares her experiences of partnering as a parent in health research. Paul Ferry first asked Rachel about how COVID-19 has impacted her work.
For myself, I, as a parent partner, but also someone who is working with CanChild Center for Childhood Disability, a lot of my work is actually done at home. And so we connect on an international level currently, say with our family engagement and research course. And so our reach, basically I work in Ontario, but live in Calgary, so it's a heck of a commute. But at the same time, it's a wonderful opportunity where I have the researchers basically know that I live as a caregiver a very unusual life. So there's a lot of freedom in that and a lot of grace given if something should go wrong with my son or something like that. So it's it has shifted a bit of the trajectory in terms of what I do. We are starting to ask very pertinent COVID-related questions. So, for instance, we're rolling out a study fairly soon in regards to tracking whether or not families of who have children who are in complex care patients, whether or not their access to supplies or medical technology and servicing said medical technology, whether that shifts over time, be it good or bad. We're looking for one answer or the other, essentially. So different things like that. We're definitely starting to ask more focused questions. It's given the opportunity that now is an important time to kind of start gathering some perspectives as how this is affecting people.
For sure, yeah. Have you heard anything else from anyone else that you know in the patient-oriented research or patient engagement communities about how this might have affected some of their projects?
I think more the ones that go integrated within the community. That tends to be more of a challenge. Some of that has drifted more into the space of social media and kind of slowly starting to establish trust with people, because those are honest in reality sacred spaces to a lot of people. And so to have someone come in and kind of introduce themselves as a researcher, that's still it can be dodgy territory if not done well. And so for a lot of the researchers that I work with, they've either had to kind of put projects aside for now, just given as everyone's just trying to sort things out, and obvious no contact rules and stuff like that. But in other ways, it's kind of gotten a lot of people to try to be more creative in terms of how they facilitate those access points in communities that they're looking to serve.
Any examples of what they might have done to be creative here?
Not that I can think of offhand. Mainly Facebook tends to be one that I've seen a couple of people kind of utilize, just in the sense of taking more of a knowledge translation sort of standpoint to it, given the fact that the demographic that I work with is families of children with disabilities. It's still quite a new concept to be immersed into the system of collaboration when it comes to research. And so people are really kind of thoughtfully creating things like short videos on why I'm doing this. You may be worried about things like where my data is going. This is why I can show you that our systems are private, things like that. So it's just taking more opportunities to be short, quick, and thoughtful, and respectful, really, at that end as well, too.
So can you tell me what first inspired you to get involved in health research as a patient research partner, parent research partner?
That's actually really interesting. I honestly got started on a total fluke.
Okay.
I was what CanChild as an organization is really wonderful about having a community mindset. And so in Ontario, they have these wonderful family research days. And so they get everybody out, they have events, they just have a really grand time with the people that they serve as stakeholders, essentially. and they talk about their research and things like that. And a friend of mine who is a part of a social media support group, she's a fellow parent as well too, she essentially approached them and said, hey, I've got this crazy idea. What if we put researchers together in the same social space as parents and let them all kind of talk organically? I'm sure we'd learn a lot from each other. And she needed a buddy to kind of help co-moderate such an idea. And from there, it's actually turned into a lot more work.
Yeah. Can you remember some of your first impressions of getting involved in this way?
I think as a parent partner, one of the things that I do actually share a fair bit about when I do a lot of public speaking is this idea that we are empowered in our stories, but we feel very small in our personal perspectives. And so the first time, for instance, that I went to a research conference here in Calgary, a researcher asked me a perfectly normal, like, valid question, and I honestly had a little moment of panic. And if I was wearing a hooded sweatshirt, I would have put the hood over my head and pulled the string shut and went, I don't know, I'm just a mom. And so when it comes to seeing that you actually have a valid seat at the table, I think that was probably one of the biggest challenges that came out initially for me.
Any thoughts about what you wish you might have known at the beginning that might have helped get over that feeling?
I think what really kind of got me to understand that a lot more was at the time, people were still attempting to blaze trails and seek validity to patient-oriented research within this particular field. And so to say that, yes, to be validated and say, yes, you actually do have a valid seat at the table, but to also say, wait it out a little bit. This is going to take some time before we suddenly realize that we're all in this together and we're going to do awesome things.
Yeah.
And that was enough for me to be able to take a breather and say, okay, now if I were to think of a perfect situation where we were functioning well as partners, what that looked like. And we had really great slow conversations, and thus came into a lot of different projects like our family engagement and research course and things like that.
Could you describe maybe a project or two that you've been involved with as a partner?
Absolutely. Right now, I am about 2 years into a project called Envisage. So this is a project that is actually an integrated KT program that is being done simultaneously both in Canada and in Australia as well, too, and being co-created by both researchers and parents in both countries at the same time. So the idea essentially behind it is that we, for the longest time, when it came to parents having their child diagnosed with, say, something like autism or cerebral palsy, you go to an evening and they say, this is what the diagnosis is and what it isn't, and good luck with your life. And there's not a lot of emotional connection to that or feeling a sense of empowerment. You just go study up because this is your world now. And so we're looking to kind of change that more towards a focus on what the World Health Organization has for a system of understanding function and health through the ICF, or the International Classification of Functioning Health, essentially.
Yeah. What kind of role have you played personally in some of these projects?
That can actually vary depending on which researcher you talk to.
Okay, yeah.
So a lot of the connections that I've made along the way, it's been a lovely network that is created within the childhood disability research community with the SPORE network, which is Child Bright Network, and Kids Brain Health Network. And these both organizations mesh together for really big projects, and then often there are times they're doing their own thing. And so one of the big project that I have really found a keen interest in as I kind of move towards more of a genuine interest in public policy myself is we have been kind of working on the federal disability portfolio a little bit, introducing the federal government to ideas on what child health can look like, but also understanding what a lifespan approach to living with a disability can be, and how we need to incorporate that into the policies that we are meant to support disabled persons in Canada. And so part of that as well too is the fact that we have some very significant data gaps in Canada. One of them being we have not been recording information on disabled children from the age 15 and under since 2006. And so that has come with a collaboration of the federal government between both these disability organizations as well as a couple trips to the United Nations as well too. So I spent some time in New York during their major conference that they have out there about disability.
Okay.
And was also part of the reporting process for as a part of a larger coalition of disability organizations that came to report on the status of Canada and disability rights. So it's been quite a complex and very passionate project of mine personally.
Oh yeah, no, it sounds amazing, really, to be honest.
Oh yeah, it's been. I think a lot of people in this time as well too, particularly within the pandemic setting, are starting to kind of understand where what has felt kind of like slight gaps in the system when it comes to health and health access and things like that are now kind of becoming cavernous, and now we're really starting to have these conversations. So it's nice to kind of be able to put a lot of this work into the forefront, and now we can start talking about what is health, how can we help people, and especially in really difficult circumstances, how can we really be of assistance, what are they going through, things like that.
So can you describe some of your work that you've done with McMaster University, which, as a fun fact, is where I was born?
Nice. Right on. So there's been a lot of different projects. One of them being, I did allude to a little bit in one of your previous questions, but we have this Facebook group called Parents Partnering in Research. And the idea of jumping into a partnership, we usually we don't really talk about the notion of primary engagement a lot in that idea, as I mentioned, how I had my own self-doubts about what it meant to be a partner and stuff like that. We get that energy, but we don't really think about how can we exist together and start creating new ideas, essentially, and just have really great conversations and kind of see what comes out of it. And so this has been a Facebook group that has actually gone on for about 5 years now. And has actually helped develop multiple projects as well too, just out of the fact that we all kind of hang out in the same space and we know each other and we can think about new ideas. And it's not like you have to go out and search for your own partner because they're already there. You know these people and you know them well, and you know you can connect well in a healthy way as well too.
So I want to explore this idea of social media then in the world of patient engagement. What kind of role do you think it plays or even can play?
Well, I think that there's definitely a fine line in terms of relational spaces and things like that, in terms of how we start to connect. I think that there's a really important role that we need to consider in regards to education, and saying that patient engagement and family engagement in general is a thing that exists in the world. I see many spaces upon which that doesn't necessarily reach as well too. And so if we can start kind of embedding that idea into the idea, like post-diagnosis and things like that, that this is something that you can actually be put some of your energy into and things like that, because really in the end, as you start investing in whatever sort of a health-related diagnosis that you have, you kind of feel like you want to be able to give back. And this is an opportunity to kind of take it. For me personally, I can say that it's a very therapeutic thing to be able to partner in research, because it feels I see systems advancing and I see great things happen. And that's a tangible thing to say, yes, nobody has to repeat my story. And I feel like social media can have a definite opportunity to start sharing that with people in terms of how other people have had their experiences, not just myself, but like as more people start to join, that information and that knowledge brokerage starts to grow as well too. I see Twitter as well too, which can in some ways be a bit of a health info cesspool. There's also real and tangible communities that come out of this as well too, if you look to cultivate a real understanding of who's working in what sort of health related fields that you have a keen interest in and things like that.
Yes. So as the Alberta SPORE patient engagement platform, we often get questions from researchers about all sorts of things to do with patient engagement. Do you have any thoughts about any special considerations for researchers who are interested in sort of family or caregiver engagement specifically?
I think you really honestly need to feel a bit of a value system deep in your bones in terms of who you're looking to connect with your research. I think that in some cases, I've come to understand with that some people kind of feel like this is just an overnight thing. Like I should just put a poster up on a wall and I'll be good. But at the same time, if you really do see something that is a considerable gap, we need to honor. I mean, we have these frameworks. I've seen lovely frameworks being published in research about how to connect with, say, First Nations communities and things like that. And then they just kind of sit there in the great World Wide Web not being used. But if we're not thinking about what that looks like, boots on the ground, chatting with people, we need to really kind of honor the time that we have there. And I think there's really great opportunities in doing things like going to diagnosis related support organizations and saying, have a science night. Okay. And just talk about what your research is doing, and how that impacts you. And then they put a face, because really in some respects, there is kind of that divide in some ways where academia feels like this kind of on a hill thing, and then that information is funneled down to the little people. And you want to kind of bridge that divide and start making that feel more like a level playing field to some people, because so much great work can come about in one corner and with some really great dedicated people, but we also need to bring more people into the fold, and we need to kind of start thinking about how we do that and do that well.
Yeah, no, for sure. You've talked a few times actually so far about the importance of partnerships. What kind of role do you think they play, either for projects that you've been involved in or more generally in the world of patient engagement?
I think that partnerships can really, as trust sort of builds, I think I can say particularly for the caregiver community that I work with, there is a bit of a lack of identity past diagnosis. In terms of, I can even say myself when it comes to when I started going to the hospital more professionally than I was as a mom, I kind of went through a bit of a depression. And I had a friend actually say, you know what, you've lost your identity. Like you're no longer in fight mode, but you've learned some really great things. Now it's okay, how do you parcel that up and put that back into the world in a good way? And so when it comes to partnerships, I think we can start to kind of say, trying to think how I can say this. I think with partnerships, I think there's a way where we can all kind of become empowered together. But that comes with really finding that value system as well too. I do think that there is some merit in the future to study what the lifespan of a partner can look like, because I do think that there is a genuine concern when it comes to burnout, and things like that. And I think that we need to kind of think about what sort of steps we're taking and how mindful we are about the experiences people have in life when it comes to having to walk away because of treatment or a person's child isn't doing well, things like that. So we don't want to make this feel, there seems to be this need where we kind of have a professional divide where we kind of push things off to the side where we don't get too invested. And you don't necessarily have to, but you can also have basic human consideration and kind of think about who the person is in front of you and start asking questions and really just talking in a genuine sense. We don't put enough credit in just being someone who might actually have a keen interest in understanding who the other person is that you're working with and things like that.
No, for sure. Do you have any advice for anyone listening who might be interested in becoming a patient partner for the first time? Like anything that you wish you knew before you had started, or just some thoughts for people who are like want to dip a toe in but haven't really gotten involved yet?
First off, I think I would say researchers are people too. I would say take kind of a personal moment to think, oh, this is one interesting trait about this person, and that has nothing to do with research, just as a genuine human being, because that starts to personalize them. But then I would also say as well too, to maybe write down your expectations and ways that you communicate any anxieties you might have, and just put it on a piece of paper and say, this is who I am, this is what I bring to the table, and this is what I am nervous as heck about. And I'm hoping that you can kind of help alleviate my fears in that respect. And when you put that all out on the table, then there's no kind of dancing on eggshells when it comes to some of the eccentricities that just two human beings who are just starting to connect can sometimes bring, and little challenges here and there in terms of interpersonal relations.
Mm-hmm. What about almost from the flip side then? Like, is there any advice that you would give to researchers who haven't really done patient engagement yet, but are thinking about starting?
I would think that there is some lovely opportunities out there in regards to how to really kind of consider what those relationships look like.
Mm-hmm.
What's lovely about my job, for instance, with this family engagement and research course, which it's an easy one to Google through CanChild, is that I work as a mentor for researchers and for parents as well too. So it's not like you're just taking some information and moving forward. You actually have someone to sit down and talk to afterwards about this, and just kind of be open and say, this is kind of what I'm considering, because I don't think that there's really significant blanket answers that as a researcher that kind of encompasses everybody's experience and the needs and things like that. Mm-hmm. I think that researchers who are coming with that value system already are looking to target somebody in particular. And so it's nice to kind of talk to other people who have had those experiences prior, or to take a course as well too.
Mm-hmm. Maybe one final question then. What excites you the most about patient engagement in health research?
I love seeing things move forward.
Mm-hmm.
I joke with the researcher that I work with the most that I'm a bit of an idea chihuahua. And I say that because I get this just like small dog level energy about certain things, and seeing things move forward because it's new, it's interesting, and I love information. And so when it comes to, sometimes she kind of has to rein me in as a dog a little bit as well too. But at the same time, I'm very passionate about seeing the world move forward with new information and new understandings of stuff. And just, I've been a parent to a medically complex child for 14 years, and mm-hmm. my understanding of how that can be now than it was 14 years ago mm-hmm. is significantly different. And I could say that this has had impacted me in saying I want to bring this to other people, because it makes me feel so much more empowered to know that there's a legacy to be left in that respect, and that people can kind of come with a fresh energy as well too, and understanding that many of the challenges that they may face have fresh ideas, that because actually one of our students in a course that we were taking, she had a really great analogy. She says, you researchers have textbooks, we have storybooks. And I really do feel like that is such a valuable mm-hmm. picture of what how we blend together, mm-hmm. because there's so many nuances in between that that makes the work more exciting when we partner together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks so much for joining us on the podcast today.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of Pep Talks, the Patient Engagement Podcast. Brought to you by the Alberta Strategy for Patient-Oriented Research Patient Engagement Team. Special thanks to Paul Ferry, Sadia Ahmed, and Sandra Zielinski, and our summer students Sarah, Sydney, and Stella for their co-production. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you found it, and we hope you'll join us again for more interesting discussions about patient engagement in health research and healthcare.